Ian mentioned what he'd do about severe depression. Well, now this one I can give you a couple hours on. I'm eating a carrot, excuse me. I know it's rude and it makes crunchy noises, but I only do one. Oh, so delicious. Here's a problem with depression, Ian. I don't have to tell you this. It's just I've suffered from it my entire life. Really, certainly from the time I was 14 or 15 at least. And that's a while now. That's 45 years, so I ought to know what I'm talking about. The main problem with depression as a malady, as an illness to have, is that number one, because it's a psychological illness, you don't get to show any real outside symptoms, and it makes you feel like maybe I should just buck up, or maybe I'm just, a crybaby, or maybe this or that, and you probably had relatives or friends who are saying, well, just cheer up, man, what's so bad? But the reason that depression is so heartbreaking is because it is an illness that robs you of your desire to fight the illness. That's a very pernicious thing. It's a very, very tough thing to have an illness whose primary symptom is that you don't really care about how unhappy or miserable you are, and you kind of, not really thinking of killing yourself so much as just having the thought that if I drive off a bridge by accident or something, it wouldn't, solve a lot of problems. That's not the same thing as actively considering suicide, although there are some people who do that too. Having suffered from this and having had an addictive personality my entire life, and having been treated for depression and addictive behavior by going to Narcotics Anonymous, even though I have never ever had a drug use problem, I certainly had the same kind of disease as these people, just had different coping mechanisms. But what I found was that the people I met in Narcotics Anonymous, I thought were just going to be a bunch of homeless drug addicts, burned out, fried losers. And I have never, as a group, with the exception of this group, never met a group of people that I thought was so bright and so funny and in so much pain. It is what it is. It can be just living hell. And the reason I mention this is because most of the time you will have people just look at you and say, well, what's wrong? And you can't tell them what's wrong. And this, is it money? Is it this? It's like, no. Winston Churchill suffered from crushing depression. Abraham Lincoln suffered from depression that nearly killed him. And they just had to soldier on. And lots of people don't have that kind of strength or support. But things are different now. Churchill referred to depression as the black dog. It was like a black dog that came to visit him. And we'll get to treatment and medication in a second, but the first thing I would say, Ian, is that think about this as a black dog. And the reason I say that is because I know what this is like. There are times, even today, and sometimes I just warn Natasha about it. There are times when I can feel like this weather front moving in, and I can just feel it. I know it, and I can feel myself starting to get into that trench. Not nearly as bad as it used to be because of medication stuff. Again, I'll come back to that in a minute. But here's the first thing that I learned that really helped me a lot, and it could help you a lot too. And that is, when these episodes start to come on, there's only one thing you need to do, and it's not fight it, and it's not man up or chin up or no, none of that, because it doesn't matter. It's coming. It's like the weather. It's like a cold front. You can't control it. There's nothing you can do about it. And the one thing you can do about it is, the only thing that used to help me is to remember that it is going to pass. It's going to be here. It's going to be miserable. You're going to be really sad, and then it'll get better. And if you've got chronic depression, as I did, it'll get better and worse, and so on. But when it's really bad, just think of it as a hurricane outside, and just don't make any big decisions and don't do anything stupid, because you will feel better. It reminds me of an adage that pilots have. A lot of pilots get killed by flying into marginal weather. Nobody gets killed by flying into a hurricane because nobody's that stupid. But a lot of people get killed by flying into conditions that you think there's a very good chance you'll make it, and most of the time you do. But then the weather gets worse and the clouds get lower and you fly into a mountain. And pilots would say about this, they say, if you kill yourself by flying into bad weather, your funeral will be on a sunny day. And I thought that's exactly right. If you kill yourself because of bad weather, low clouds, stormy weather, by the time they're ready to put you in the ground, that front will have come through and it'll be a beautiful sunny day. So there's that. Now look, there's a lot of behavioral problems that come with depression, and the depression leads to the behavioral problems. Those behavioral, what do we want to call them? Maladjustments, let's say, cause you to be in worse trouble, which creates even more depression. So there's going to be a fair amount of work that has to be done on the emotional side of it. But here's the really, really, really good news. Really, really good news. When I was first getting treated for this, it was November 7th of 1985. Remember, crystal clear. I woke up crying. I just called my mom and said, I can't take this anymore. And she finally got me into somebody that she knew. And that's when things started to get better for me. And I got sent to NA meetings, and I fought against that. I said, the only problem I don't have is a drinking or a drug problem. I got everything else, but I don't just go. So I went. And then I heard people I'd never met before tell my life story in some form or another. There was I was probably, it was 85, so I was 26. And I was sitting in the circle, and I remember I was so angry that I felt like and I was so emotionally charged that I felt like my feet were so hot they were going to melt the linoleum. That I remember very, very well. And across this circle stands up a guy who was probably in his mid to late 50s, black man electrician, and he just basically told everybody exactly how I feel. And when this thing was over, I had a number of people come up to me and say, here's my phone number, here's the next meeting, and I just didn't believe them. I just couldn't believe and wouldn't believe that people who I'd never met before would really care that much about me. And it took weeks before I realized that this was actually sincere, but it is sincere. And the reason that concern for you is sincere is, as we were talking about earlier with Martin, it's sincere because these people also walked into a room one night, and people took care of them and made them feel not just cared about. They made them feel like they made me feel immediately that first evening. They made me feel immediately that if something happened to me, somebody would miss me. It would matter. Somebody would know and care. Here's the good news. I did all of this behavioral stuff. I had a therapist who did just kind of talk therapy twice a week, helped a lot. And I had a sponsor in Narcotics Anonymous, and he helped an enormous lot. And I will just tell you this, just as an example of the power of this. My sponsor was a guy who used to be a stockbroker, and he made a couple $1 million. And then he sniffed all that money up his nose, and he lost his family, lost his apartment, lost his job, lost his car. And next thing you know, he's working in Miami at a Chevron station, pumping gas. And I would go and visit him sometimes because I worked in a nightclub, which is probably not the best thing for. Certainly, the fellow drug addicts and alcoholics couldn't understand it, but it wasn't kidding. I didn't have a drinking problem, and so I went to him one night and I was just so upset about this. Some girl had said something or somebody I was interested in, or this happened, or the car was broken. I didn't know what it was. It just fire coming out of my ears. And he just said, sit down. I'm telling him about all this stuff that's just bothering me so much. And he looks at me and he says, so do you have a place to sleep tonight? Because, we got a couch, spare place for you to sleep. I said, no, I'm fine. He says, what about hungry? Are you hungry? There's McDonald's. It was a Burger King actually across the street. I got $5 for you. Go over, get a Whopper. You hungry? I said, no. He said, so you got a place to sleep and you're not hungry, right? He says, then what's the problem? And you're stuck, You're stuck. What's the problem? There's so much in those meetings that is so wise and so powerful. And chief among them, I remember, was you be in this rebellious mood, I don't know if I really need to be here. And you start arguing with these people who'd been doing this for years. Start arguing with them. And they wouldn't argue with you. They just look at you and say, well, if you're so smart and you got everything all figured out, why are you here? That's got some help. But all of this to say this, I was told by my therapist, there's no magic pill for this. There's no this, there's no that. You're just going to have to tough it out. You're going to have to build up these internal reserves and this internal self-respect and esteem that you never had, and you're going to have to learn how to parent yourself, and all of these things are just going to be hard work. And so I did the hard work. And then I came to Los Angeles and went back to Florida many years later. I looked up this person who was one of 2 or 3, 4 people that have saved my life. And she said, remember when I told you that there's no magic pill for this? I said, yeah. And she said, well, it turns out there might be. This was 1991. I went back to Florida. I was working at the Space Transit Planetarium where I'd been working since 1973. And she said there was something that might be useful. So I got a little, this is really important, and you got to listen to this. I got a little, like a starter kit. Doctors often give these out for medications, little paper cardboard thing with, here's what you take the first day, and here it gives you like a month's supply or something like this. Anyway, she handed me this little starter kit for this new kind of experimental drug called Prozac. And she said, we're seeing really amazing results with this. We're seeing astonishing results with this. I said, well, since you spent the last 3 years telling me that there was no easy way around this, I'm going to take your word for it. So I went home, I took that first Prozac pill, and it usually takes about 4 days or so, 3 or 4 days for it to really come up. But I'm telling you this from the bottom of my heart. I took this thing, I went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, my first thought when I woke up was, oh, so this is what it's like to wake up a normal human being. This is what being normal feels like. I felt so much better. I couldn't even recognize myself. But it was my waking thought. It was the first thing I had been in my bloodstream for 12 hours maybe. And I wake up and I remember thinking, okay, so this is what it's like for everybody else. That particular medication is generic now. It's not terribly expensive. It's widely prescribed. And what you're probably going to find, if you've got significant ongoing depression, you will absolutely benefit from this medication. I'm telling you, it will change your life, and it'll change your life in 24 hours. You are suffering from depression because you have a serotonin deficiency. And if you feel self-conscious about taking antidepressants, you're in the exact same boat as somebody who's a diabetic and who feels self-conscious about taking insulin. You're not manufacturing enough of this stuff that you need in your head. And nobody's really sure why it happens, but it happens to a lot of people. It certainly happened to me. And your emotions are swinging around all over the place because they're not being regulated the way that they should be regulated if you had enough serotonin in your bloodstream. So Prozac was the first of the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And basically what Prozac does is it blocks your body's ability to remove serotonin from your system, and your serotonin levels go up, and all of a sudden, man, life is 90% easier. You've still got a bunch of, emotional baggage that's trailing you around, but you can just do it. Now, Ian just writes, I know there are doctors out there who are not out for the patient's best interest. That is, if you'll pardon me from saying so, that is an excuse that you are giving yourself in order to not go. And as they would say in Narcotics Anonymous, that's your disease talking. This illness, this addictive behavior, depression illness, is unbelievably nasty and pernicious, and it works on you in ways you don't even know about. So when I see somebody say something like, well, there are just a lot of doctors out there who are not very reliable, I feel enormous connection to that statement, because that is your disease basically saying, you don't need any help, you're doing just fine. I have yet to run into a doctor who doesn't look out for their patient's best interests, and so I would say I just kind of call BS on that one. You're going to find that there's a lot of that. You're going to find a lot of resistance to it. And one of the worst things about trying to recover from this is the what's the word they used? It's been a long time. It's a simple word. It's like when you fall off the wagon. I can't remember it. Anyway, so you start getting treatment, you start getting the medication, you start maybe doing some of this behavioral stuff, you start going to NA meetings or AA meetings or whatever meetings you find to be interesting. Every one of the 12 relapse, thank you. Thank you very much, guys. There's 17 cases of relapse. Yeah, so you're doing better, and in fact, you're feeling so much better. You're in a state that we would call a pink cloud. You're in a pink cloud now. Things are better. You can feel better. All the world looks much, much better. All of that hopelessness is gone. You're feeling like, my God, I'm making incredible progress. This is unbelievable. And then a relapse will occur, because they will always occur. Always, always, always happens to everybody. And when it comes back after you felt better, it was the most dangerous time for me, because that's when I thought, okay, there's no way out of this. This is just, this is just never going to go away. Well, I mean, to some degree, I'm right. It never does go away. It's the pain goes away, and the enormous majority of my time is really fun now. But even with this ongoing medication, and it took 10 years to dial that in exactly the way I want it. But even with that, I'm basically functioning like a normal person now. I have a normal emotional reaction to things and a normal level of fear and anxiety about things. But still, every now and then, a couple times a year now for me, I can feel it, and I can see it out at sea. I can see this real clear line of black clouds. I can feel it coming in, and I have eventually had the wisdom to realize that there's nothing I can do about that. You're just gonna have to ride it out. It's just a hurricane. This is so heartbreakingly poignant and sincere. He writes, I just want a wife, a house, and family. That's all I want. That's all I wanted too. Honest to God, all of this, publicity and small amount of fame and all the rest of it, I just wanted a wife, a house, and a family. That's it. And I got it. And I got it not because I toughed it out, and I didn't get it because I got lucky. Ian, this is the best part you're going to have to remember. Of all the things so far, you need to remember this one thing. All of those things are possible. You can achieve all of those things, but you are going to have to work. You're going to have to work at it. It is not going to come to you through a magic pill. It's not going to come to you through toughing it out. You are going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to make a decision whether or not you want to get better or not. And another useful idea we learned in all of those meetings was this idea of hitting bottom. Hitting bottom, I hit bottom on November 5th of 1987. Sorry, November 7th of 1985. That was the day I woke up and I decided, and this is really important, so please listen. That was the day I woke up and said, I will do anything, anything to not feel like this anymore. I will do anything. I'm ready. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. Somebody told me I had to paint myself blue and go out under a full moon on a golf course and swat myself on the head with a palm frond. If that's what they told me, I would have done it. And that's the honest to God, unvarnished truth, Ian. That's the truth. You can have all of those things, but you won't get them. They will not come to you. You will continue to go through the same thing of doing the same thing again and again and again and making the same mistakes with women, same mistakes with money. It's going to happen again and again and again and again and again. It's never going to change until you reach the point when you decide that you don't want to do this anymore, that you can't do it anymore. And when that feeling becomes more powerful than this voice that's telling you not to do anything about it, when that feeling and that, well, it's not a feeling, when that pain becomes more powerful than the voice of denial, then you'll have an excellent chance, a really excellent chance of not only recovering from this. And here's the good news: there is actually good news in this. If you do the work, and it's work that takes a lifetime. You're never going to stop working on it, but your life will get better fast. And if you do the work, you're going to come out of life with something that people who don't have your problems don't have. You're going to come out of it with a fundamental level of compassion and understanding that not even the best-hearted people have. There are people out there whose hearts are just made out of gold, and we've got most of them here on the Stratosphere Lounge crowd. And I see so many people who are so willing to help just out of good-natured friendship and just plain respect, just one citizen to another. But if they have not suffered from it themselves, then they are responding out of the kindness of their heart, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But you will be able to see things and talk about things and help people in a way that somebody who has not been through this just simply can't. And it's not exactly the kind of exclusive club I wanted to be in. I would have rather been in the Playboy Club, to be honest with you. But the fact is, it comes a real benefit, and you will develop a wisdom out of this. But look, man, it's really simple, and it doesn't get any simpler than this. You'll start feeling better when you decide that you want to feel better. And I know that sounds like a cold thing to say, because your first reaction to that is, I hate this, I feel horrible, I'll do anything to feel different. If you'll do anything to feel different, then tomorrow you'll go find if you have health insurance, you'll talk to your doctor and ask to see a psychologist. And the psychologist will talk to you and ask some questions, and the psychologist will then send you to a psychiatrist. It will be a psychiatrist who will have to prescribe this medication. And the medication will come. You will get the medication. There's no question about it. You're clearly depressed. It's generic medication. Even if you don't have health insurance, the stuff is $2 for 30 pills or something like that. It's just plain lucky like that. And when you decide to do it, you'll begin. And if it turns out that you need more pain before this happens, I'd love to be able to tell you that I could step in there and take that away from you, or that all of us together could take it away from you, but that's just a lie. If you're not ready to go yet, it's because you're not hurting bad enough yet. And now there's a race on to see who's going to win, whether you're going to get enough pain to get to the bottom and decide you'll do anything to get better, or is this disease going to prove stronger than you, and you're just going to stay like this until you're not here anymore? Just do it, man. Sometimes I had an actual miracle happen to me yesterday. I was so close to this entire idea, and I might talk about this later, or I may not, I don't know. But yesterday there was an actual, genuine, knock me in the face, gobsmack miracle. And these are available for the asking, but you've got to ask. You've got to ask. You've got to ask for help. Ask and ye shall receive, and seek and ye shall find. Basically what God is saying there is that, yes, we will certainly, there will be people to pull you up and help you, but no one's going to come after you to do it. You've got to want it. If you don't want it, it's not going to work. I was rooming with two guys who were both NA roommates of mine. I loved them. Loved them. They were great, great guys. And one of them wanted to get better, and the other one didn't. And the guy who wanted to get better, I wanted to get better too. We're doing things we needed to get better, and this other guy wasn't. And we would talk about him. His name was John, and we'd say, he hasn't hit bottom yet. Because if he had hit bottom, he'd be doing anything, including what we were doing. So look, man, I'm here to tell you, it works. I don't mean to be the center of attention. Ian, you didn't make yourself the center of attention. I made your case the center of attention. Actually, I made my case the center of attention because people were there to help me, and they saved my life. And to the degree that we can do that for you, that's great. And I have a lot of confidence that it's going to work for you and that it's going to get better. And that as time goes on in the years to come, we're going to hear more and more from you about how positive things are, and then something's going to happen in another year or two or three or whatever. Somebody else is going to mention something like that, and you'll be able to jump in there and help them and pay it forward. So we're going to be looking. Next week we expect to see some progress, and if you don't do it between now and then, it's not like we won't love you anymore, or not that we hate you or think you're a loser. It's just we're going to remind you next week, and we're going to keep reminding you and let you know that you're not in this by yourself. You feel like you are, but you're not. And not only are the Stratosphere Lounge crew behind you, but there are armies of people out there right this second. Within 5 miles or 2 miles or 1 mile of where you live right now, there are hundreds of people within 5 miles of where you live, hundreds of them, who will do just about anything to help you because they needed the help and they got it. And that's why I go down this road every now and then. I just do it because this is all I can do to pay back the people who were there for me, like my sponsor and all the rest of those people. So just do it. Make a note for today, tomorrow. I don't know what your situation is, whether you have health care, a doctor, or whatever, but look, if it turns out you're in a position where you don't have those things, find a clinic, go talk to just a regular health clinic, tell somebody you're suffering from depression, and then they will recommend you to a clinic, and that person will then recommend you to a psychologist, which might be... My psychologist, when I walked in there, said, I think I should see you twice a week. And I said, I don't have any money. And she said, well, what do you have? I said, I mean, I got like nothing. It's just an insult. Well, and she's doing this for a reason now. She said, well, what could you pay? And I said, I don't know, $5 a week? She said, okay, we'll start at $5 a week. We'll start at $5 a week, and then as things get better, we'll see about raising it. But for now and for the foreseeable future, for as long as, don't worry about it, it's going to be $5 a week. And the reason she made me pay $5 a week was because I had to buy it. I couldn't just be given it. I had to buy it. I had to pay for it. It didn't matter what I was paying, but I did have to pay for it. So you say you've got some form of health insurance. This is a very simple thing, and it's a painless thing. And I suspect that you'll have the dual roads that most of us follow. One of them is the medication road, which will enormously improve your ability to fight this. And that's actually the easy stuff. It's just, you take a pill every day and you'll feel significantly better. But you won't have to go through what I went through when I started doing this, which is try to fight all of the behavioral issues while you're still under that chemical cloud. You're going to find that you'll feel a lot better, and the magic pill will be great. And then, once you're feeling better, then you'll be confronted with the wreckage of all of the things that you've done during these years, and you're going to have to go back and fix that. And that is hard, nasty work, really nasty work. But that's what it costs. So, are you ready to pay it or not? I have learned. I talked about this miracle that happened to me yesterday. I have learned that the people that God cares the most about, He puts through the most pain. That's a tough thing to reconcile yourself with, and most people don't ever get to that place. They just fight it. But if you can get to the understanding of it, you realize that you're going through this because you're being molded into somebody that has the potential to be really useful to Him. I wasn't religious at all when I went to Narcotics Anonymous. I had no religion. I was absolute avowed scientific atheist. I didn't believe in any of this stuff. And when they would talk about a higher power, I said, I don't believe in a higher power. And my sponsor said, you ever been to the ocean? I said, yeah, I grew up in the ocean. I'm Bermuda and Florida. We're here in Florida. Yes, I've been to the ocean, Ian. And that was his name, by the way. He said, you ever seen a wave that you couldn't resist? You ever seen a wave big enough to knock you over? I said, yes. I said, well, so let that be your higher power for the time being, okay? You just have to understand there are things more powerful than you, including this affliction. And if you don't believe in God, that's fine. But there are things more powerful than you, Bill Whittle. You understand that, right? And I said, I don't really know if I do believe that, actually, come to think of it. And I used to have a lot of fun with those guys. And they loved me because I was funny. And I was funny because I was happy. I got a reputation among that group of people. I got my reputation because after 4 weeks or something, I raised my hand, and everybody gets to talk. Everybody gets to talk and share what they want to share, talk about what they want to talk about or not, as the case may be. And after about 4 weeks, I raised my hand. And I'd been really dumping a lot of really emotional stuff and really making some progress. And I raised my hand and I said with a straight face, I said, does Narcotics Anonymous have, is there like a magazine or something that they have? Is there like a newsletter or a magazine? And they said, no, not really. Why do you ask? I said, because I want to have my picture taken and put on the cover of that magazine for having the world land speed record for recovery. That's what I want. And everybody laughed. And I laughed too. And then there were times when I wasn't laughing. During the holidays, Christmas holidays, I went to 3 meetings a day. Pretty much from the time of Thanksgiving on, I was doing 2. But as we started getting to Christmas, day before Christmas, all the way through the end of New Year's, I was going 3 times a day. Because the idea of being by myself in the holidays, again, was just horrific. So you've got friends who are there, and you have friends in high places, and you have, whether you know it or not, you have the very powerful friend in the very highest place, and that friend is more than willing to help you out of this. But what he needs to see is he needs to see that you want it, because if you don't want it enough, it's not going to work. And so it's not like you're getting ripped off. It's not like he doesn't care. It's just unless you want it enough, it's not going to work. And when you want it enough, you'll make a call, and then you'll be surrounded by people who are exactly like you. Like I said, they were the by far the brightest, funniest people I'd ever met before. Really, really brilliant, funny people. I knew this girl who was taking her dog's pain medication, and she would have to admit that. And all kinds of things. Just, okay, you admitted it, and now it's out, and we still like you. So, anyway, there's obviously some reason why this didn't turn into the Firewall Topics thing. It's coming up on 8. I have a letter of gratitude to write that is going to take all of my ability. It's going to take all of my writing skill to make this person appreciate just how much they've done for me. And Yeah, hey, look at it this way. Steve Darrow, our friend Steve Darrow, points out today's D-Day. Ian and Martin, it's D-Day. It's the day, June 6th. It's the day that we decided to go ashore and stop those Nazi bastards who were killing everybody. And D-Day's easy to remember. D-Day is easy to remember, and if you make a decision to do this, both of you guys, D-Day, JC2K says D-Day is do it day. Love it. But then your anniversary will be D-Day, and every time D-Day comes around, you'll remember D-Day was the day I started getting better. D-Day was the day that that requires courage. It requires courage. Somebody said to me once. They said, if you ask somebody what is the hardest thing in the world to do, you get a bunch of different answers, and some people would say, well, becoming a brain surgeon, or making $1 billion, or any number of things. If you asked anybody what the hardest thing in the world to do, you'd get as many different answers as you had people. And he said, but that's not the hardest thing in the world. The hardest thing in the world to do is the same for everybody. It is the hardest thing in the world to do is to change yourself. Change yourself. That is the hardest thing in the world to do, and that's what faces you, and you shouldn't gloss over it. And I'm not glossing it over it for you either. I'm not telling you this thing's going to be a cakewalk or it's going to be a bed of roses. None of it's going to be horrible and painful, but it is going to start working immediately, and you will feel better, and there will come a time, as it came with me, where you will have a beautiful house and an incredible wife and all of the things that you deserve, but you won't get those things if you keep making the same mistakes, and you'll keep making the same mistakes until you decide to get some help on this, and that is just the fundamental truth of it, like it or not. I've earned another carrot.